Hello and welcome to HAZMAT, the only show that just ran out of red paint, so we're kind of just going to have to finish the door in like blue, I guess.
It's the America door now.
It's the America door now. I'm Matt.
And I'm Harry.
And we're here to review Insidious, the Red Door.
Not Chapter 5. We
Not
have to stress,
Chapter
not
5.
Chapter 5.
The last one wasn't Chapter 4, and they've continued that trend.
We have to really, really stress that it's not Chapter 5. Anyone's looking for Insidious Chapter 5, they're going to be disappointed.
They're going to be disappointed because that's not what this is. So what do we think of Insidious, the Red Door?
Strange that, like, going into this movie, I saw a few... No, I didn't read through the reviews because I didn't want to, like, spoil it for myself or see what other people were saying. But just some of the headlines were kind of dragging it a little. It just seemed, like, very, like, middling.
Middle of the road, yeah.
Kind of like, oh, it's just another Insidious movie. But
right.
I really like this one.
It felt like more than that to me. It felt like an important installment to the franchise. A bit more important than the last two because we were back with the central family.
Yeah.
Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne, our faves.
Yeah, if you take Insidious Chapter 2 and Insidious The Red Door all together, it makes a pretty, like,
yeah, you can take that as
trilogy.
One story. Yeah.
I don't know how you picked up on a lot of stuff from this one, but for me, this movie kind of recontextualizes the whole trilogy, like the whole series.
Right, okay.
The entire series. It's now elevated to something more than what it was.
Yeah.
So I was always kind of going into the Insidious movies just seeing them as like a scary kind of haunted house, just standard ghost movie. For me now, the movies aren't about hauntings in like the traditional sense. It's more about dealing with past trauma.
Yeah.
That's what all the movies... Because when you go back and look at them after seeing this one, you kind of reevaluate what they're about. Every single character that goes through one of these hauntings has something in their past or something that's just happened to them that they haven't dealt with, and that's what's causing like the events to play out.
That's a really good point. Patrick Wilson, he's got his whole story with his father that he didn't know.
His father leaving when he was young,
Quinn from the third one, her mother passed
dies
away
early on, and she doesn't know how to deal with it. Elise had the whole backstory with her.
That's a really good point.
It's often to do with a parental figure, and I think it's a very interesting way of portraying, I guess, like generational trauma, which we've seen before in films, portrayed in like vastly different ways. I know a lot of people said that like Turning Red was about generational trauma.
Turning Red Door.
You don't think? Now, come now.
Now, hold on.
It's a really interesting way of doing it about how these ghosts kind of aren't just malicious entities looking to take you over. It's more how they're a representation of the character's feelings. You leave like feelings of like anger, hatred, resentment unchecked, and they do kind of take you over, and that's the possession in this sense.
My sort of one gripe with the film is that it sort of felt like we were discovering stuff we already knew, because the majority of it is sort of Patrick Wilson and Dalton slowly discovering things again and remembering things again. But it's from this world that like they've forgotten about, but we know about. We're almost discovering through their eyes again.
Yeah.
And it felt like we should have got to the main thing quicker, and then like have more time with like the demon at the end.
Like an issue of pacing, and it just
I think that's it. Yeah. It felt like we were doing it for too long. We were like, right, okay, let's get to what we want now, because like we know as an audience what's going on. We've had enough of them like slowly discovering things again. But now that you've said it's kind of about like past trauma, it kind of makes sense to have that part of it, like
retreading
the cracks like forming and things slowly coming back through again and being like triggered by certain events. Maybe it kind of works better than I thought it did in that context.
I think the Insidious movies have always been pretty good at like kind of retreading and like retracing the steps of stuff we've seen before, but like doing it through a different lens,
different perspective.
And maybe it was like they were doing it again, but it was almost like they spent too much on it when it's kind of been like just a short sequence in the other films, and that's what we're more used to seeing. It
felt like the film had a mystery to it, but we already knew what the answer was anyway, and we were just kind of waiting for them to figure it out rather than like going along on the ride with them.
It wasn't even like it was like egregiously like bad, or
I still enjoyed it. Like I thought the jump scares along the way were great, even though we knew the world of the further was like creeping back in there. We still weren't expecting like what ghosts were going to pop up like where they were going to see them, what was going to happen. I guess we just knew what was going on.
The fear kind of going into it was that because this one is directed by Patrick Wilson, whether it would have been too much of him, whether it had been like a vanity thing. But I think it really is Ty Simpkins who kind of carries a lot of this movie.
Yeah, I thought it was so cool that like he was the lead. I thought it was interesting. I noticed at the start he was first billed, whereas the rest of them that Patrick Wilson have been in anyway, he was first billed.
Yeah.
So for a second I was like, oh, that's interesting. Has he just surpassed him in fame now? And he's like first billed now. But I guess that's why, is because actually he was the main character of that film basically. It's a new story because he's grown up now.
Yeah, because I suppose like the other characters have kind of had their moment, and now we have Ty Simpkins, Dalton getting his solo movie,
his turn in the spotlight.
There's definitely some really cool stuff where you can tell that Patrick Wilson has really been paying attention over the course of being in these movies, and he like understands how these movies go and like what's important. Especially with like some of the character work. Like I think it's really cool how in the first Insidious there's so much focus put on like Dalton and his drawings of like all the different events, and we come up and he's grown up and now he's going to like an art college.
I thought that was a cool touch. It made so much sense.
I think that intro is really cool, how we see moments from the series
and he's drawn
and
them.
He's like sketched them out.
Now does that mean that he's seen the films? Because they were shots from the films. These weren't his memories.
No, he was standing in that exact
there was the shot
position
of
when those
Rosebud on the
moments
piano, and that's how he drew it. But that's not where he was standing.
Yeah, I know.
He was embedded a comb.
Because you see he draws the jump scare with the red
the demon. He didn't see that.
He wasn't even
He
in
wasn't
that
there.
scene. He wasn't there.
He's made that up.
No, I think that's just like a cool like little intro.
Yeah, it was a cool
sequence.
intro. Yeah. A little almost a recap in a way. Just a quick recap.
Yeah.
Without kind of using up any of the like screen time.
What I just really appreciate about this is it's been so long. Like I can't remember when the last time I got to watch an Insidious movie and not know what all the scares were ahead of time.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the scares because I think some of them are brilliant.
Like Patrick Wilson has been like. He gets it.
He is, who knew, a master at jump scares.
Really, really good.
He must have just seen it done in all these horror films. He's I'm not sure what else he's directed. But obviously he's been in a lot of horror stuff. So he's clearly absorbed these techniques. And I thought some of them were like super creative. The MRI one was crazy.
Yeah.
That was probably the one that got me the most, was that one.
That's one of the things I think in Insidious as a series they're very good at, is they set up a shot or like a scenario in which the scare is very obvious, like where it's going to come from, but they linger on it so much that you start to doubt yourself, and then they pull like a U-turn and like it comes from somewhere else.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's almost sort of meta in a way, like they know that the audience is going to know and expect it. And they're using that form and like the structure, and then like playing with it,
just
like
to screw with
just
you.
Slightly as well, like not a complete fake out to the point where you'd expect that as well. It's like just a little bit where they managed to like defy your expectations.
I think some of it is like borders on comical, because like there's one scare in particular where I was kind of like, okay, that's too much, because I could see like how they framed it. There's a scene where Patrick Wilson has been told by his doctor, because he's exploring like why he's having these memory issues, and his doctor recommends he start playing these sort of memory games. And you see he's put all these different like cards up on a segmented window, and he like flips them up, and you can see, like, if you've been watching a lot of horror movies like I can, I'm looking at that and going, okay, he's gonna flip the card up and there's gonna be like a ghost on the other side, but instead they do it to the point where like he keeps doing it and there is no ghost, and then suddenly it comes crashing through the window.
That got me as well, to the point where it's like, oh, they've gone way bigger than I ever expected them to go.
The one thing I just couldn't look at is just him sat in the car crying. Broke my heart.
Yeah, that was rough. Whenever we see Patrick Wilson cry, I think it really just affects us in a
I never
really
want to see that
visceral
man
way.
hurt. I can't believe we talked about this movie a little bit, what we were expecting. I cannot believe I called, and minor spoilers, I guess, if you really care about Insidious. I can't believe I called that the red demon guy would be the antagonist again.
Yeah.
Like come back.
Pretty prominent, like more prominent than he's been since probably the first one, in fact.
Because we were saying how like it seems going back through these movies, they're really trying to push him as like the face of
Yeah.
the franchise, like the main monster. He keeps like popping up in like the other movies.
Yeah.
And they're really kind of like they were proud of that design, I guess.
Yeah, they really want to keep using it. Maybe the actor is like James Wan's brother or something, and he has to keep him like on the payroll. But like, yeah, I mean, I've said it a couple of times in our commentaries for the other ones that are going to be coming out. Like, he is one of the least scary to me, just because he's so like his design is so like monstrous.
He just looks like a devil. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's okay, cool. It's like a scary red guy.
I think that's like a question that I raised, is that like with the red face guy and the key monster, is the whole idea of like the further being this like plane where like lost spirits are, but like it doesn't really explain, because they're supposed to be like the spirits of the dead, so they were human at some point. It doesn't really explain why these two in particular look like actual monsters when all the others kind of still look like people. Interesting. I'm thinking back of it. Well, we've mentioned how if it represents like trauma specific to that person, so the key monster was Elise's monster,
Yeah,
and the red lipstick guy was Dalton's monster, and how because they were children at the time when they first kind of encountered these things, about how maybe they're remembering them more monstrous because they're children.
Yeah, so they've made them into these like horrible monsters under the bed type creatures.
Yeah, that's what a child is more like to do. They have like something that they're actually afraid of.
That's their point
It's
of
much
reference.
more monstrous. Yeah.
Yeah, just a solid series, I think.
Solid series, solid scares,
and a solid ending. If this is the ending,
it's been a fun ride throughout. Yeah, and yeah, that's something, is that we actually got like a kind of a conclusive ending where they didn't kind of ham-fist in like any sort of twist or little hook at the end.
Yeah, there was no real cliffhanger.
It was an ending.
Yeah.
And it was like a nice ending. Super cool what they did in that. I think like the trope for horror movies of this kind, where it's like a family dealing with a haunting, is that the haunting is always usually the thing that drives a wedge between them. But in this case, it was kind of what brought them back together. The haunting was actually a good thing.
Yeah, that really backfired on the demon. Actually, he really wanted to tear them apart, but actually, it's had the opposite effect. Yeah,
makes him the worst monster. He's the worst monster.
He's just shit at it. He's really bad at it. Wow.
We all hate the.
We hate the lipstick demon man in this.
Me and all my homies hate the red lipstick face demon. Fuck him.
Fuck the lipstick red demon.
So final verdict.
I think score out of 10.
Lands?
I'm thinking like a 7.
It's definitely better than middle of the road. It's pretty solid.
It's definitely good. I think it's good.
I'd say in terms of like Insidious movie, maybe even like my second favorite.
I think it's definitely better than the prequels for sure. Yeah. Thank you for watching HAZMAT reviewing Insidious: The Red Door.
If you enjoyed this review and you'd like to see us review more stuff in the future, then you can support the channel by hitting subscribe, by leaving a like or a comment, and you can hit the notification bell. That way you'll be alerted to our more recent uploads. If you are interested in the Insidious franchise after hearing us talk about it here today, we will have a playlist up. We have recently gone through all the Insidious movies, and they'll be up shortly. And as always, all of our socials will be listed down in the description.
And join us next time, where we finally make it to the further. You ready?
I'm so ready. It's been too long.
We're finally going to do it.
We're doing it.
Here we go.
See you guys.
Bye.